How would our world change if it were really true that time does not exist? Time could be one of the greatest fallacies of our science and of all human culture. New evidence now shows that the reality in which we live is quite different. Time does not run forward or backward. This groundbreaking realization could change our perception of reality forever. Who does not know the morning glance at the clock and the time management that arises from it? We are late, early, on time, or running out of time. In everyday life, we experience stress because there is often not enough time, or time does not bring us what we would like. Scientists are now warning that we are making a huge mistake here, one that separates us from the true experience of the world and destroys our brain. What really is time? What do you think of when you have to define the essence of time? A sequence of events, a subjective feeling, or a physical quantity? You may not be surprised to learn that science has a similar problem defining time as we do as ordinary people. It's precisely this fact that makes time so fascinating. The fact that time is elusive and, strictly speaking, cannot be proven also puts time as a quantity in itself to the test. What if time does not exist? Science describes time as a fundamental physical quantity that is regarded as a continuous, irreversible sequence of events. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity sees time as relative and dependent on the movement of objects and people. Time also behaves in relation to gravity. Time passes differently near heavy objects than near light objects or in a vacuum. Time has become an integral part of our 4D world. Space consists of the three dimensions, length, height, and width, within which things happen and objects move. In outer space, countless galaxies move, and within these galaxies, stars rotate with their planets around the galactic center. In the process, time supposedly passes. A star system takes so much time to orbit the center of the galaxy. Planets orbit their stars within a certain time. And on planets, beings like us can apparently exist who organize their everyday lives according to time. But is this subjective perception of time proof that it really exists? Albert Einstein was not entirely sure. Throughout his life, he described time as one of the most uncertain quantities in the universe. He already suspected that time might be an illusion and not a fixed physical quantity. Time dilation and the theory of relativity. Was Albert Einstein right? An astronaut could fly into space and return to Earth after a certain period of time. The phenomenon of time dilation would mean that time would pass differently for the astronaut in space than it does on Earth. Theoretically, this would mean that an astronaut would return to a planet after a subjectively or actually experienced time of a few years, during which much more time has passed. The astronaut would presumably have aged less in space and would no longer recognize former peers. That much is clear from the theory. However, too little is known about the future of time to really confirm this effect. Furthermore, we are currently unable to make sufficiently long space journeys to experience the phenomenon of time dilation and to research it scientifically. Albert Einstein showed in his work that time depends on speed and gravity. In the special theory of relativity, time is perceived more slowly for moving observers than for observers at rest. This shows that time is not an absolute, universal quantity. The clearly relative forces at work in space are still a mystery to science today. Relative means that these forces do not represent a clear and linear size. The differences in the effect and behavior of these forces are clearly noticeable on Earth and in the near universe. We have to expect that relative forces such as time, movement, and acceleration have a different effect elsewhere in space. This fact alone could explain certain ambiguities in the description of the universe. Quantum mechanics knows no time. Are you aware that your world is formed from myriads of tiny particles, all of which behave very strangely? We know our world from solid things, habits, and our daily routine. In the morning, we always get up at about the same time, go about our duties and habits, and we are accustomed to the fact that the coffee stays in the cup in the morning and that we can place this cup on the table. But just imagine that in the world of quanta, your coffee cup could also be an apple, and that your table might disappear when you are not in the room. This is exactly what the behavior of quanta, small particles of light that make up our matter, demonstrates. The behavior of these particles not only puts our world of matter to the test, but also time. Quanta know no time. Just as they can occupy different definite states simultaneously, they can occupy several times at once, or they know no time at all. This would mean that time is an illusion that could be tied to our experience of matter. But if we realize that matter and time could be an illusion, what is real? This question is fascinating and keeps quantum researchers around the world busy. Classical physics has a hard time with the findings of quantum mechanics precisely because objects such as massive stars and galaxies are nothing more than light fluctuations or optical illusions at the quantum level. Conservative scientists tend to reject the findings of quantum mechanics. Incidentally, the otherwise brilliant Albert Einstein was one of them. He even discovered the quanta and won a Nobel Prize for it. But later he was so dissatisfied with the findings about his discovery that he wholeheartedly rejected quantum physics. Does time arise on the way to matter? Strictly speaking, time could arise somewhere on the way from the wave-like potential to the defined particle. However, no one has yet found this momentum. Incidentally, the situation is similar with the point in time at which matter arises. Particle researchers have been trying for decades to scientifically describe the moment of the emergence of solid matter, but so far without success. Particles acquire their mass in the Higgs field, a field related to the Higgs boson, the particle that was first detected in the particle accelerator in Geneva and which was subsequently named the God particle. However, the God particle has its pitfalls because it behaves so unpredictably that it's impossible to explain how matter is created. Once again, researchers are faced with a mystery. Is it perhaps true that time and matter are quite different from what we think? If time describes processes in matter, but matter does not really exist and cannot be described, what about time? Let's assume that matter is really just a fluctuation that arises through our perception but is not real. Then time could also arise only in our perception and not be real. Modern philosophers such as Kurt Gödel have shown that time could be an illusion because it does not exist independently of space and matter. Gödel's work on the general theory of relativity showed that certain solutions to Einstein's field equations could enable time travel, calling into question the linearity and reality of time. In a static four-dimensional universe, there could be no flow of time. Some modern scientific theories do postulate a universe in which all events exist simultaneously, and there is no linear flow of time. In this model, there is no past, present, or future, only a static block universe. We travel as consciousness through this so-called block universe and seemingly experience the passage of time. This would mean that our experience of time is directly linked to our human existence and the way our brains work. Theories such as timescape cosmology or the cosmic voids hypothesis take up these approaches and show that time is possibly a local phenomenon shaped by the structure of the universe. This would support the assumption that time is a relative phenomenon within the universe, but it is not a fixed, indefinite quantity. It exists because we experience it. However, this does not mean that it is fixed or determinate in the sense of scientific permanence. It means that time changes from a fundamental dimension to a fleeting and changeable phenomenon that only exists under certain conditions, such as in human perception. If that is the case, we should ascribe less value to time overall. Scientists' research must focus on areas such as exploring our experiences and brains. Is time destroying our brain? Of course, scientists have also tried to localize the essence of time within our brains. In the brain, time essentially takes place in the so-called temporal lobe, which is located at about the level of the temples, to the left and right of the forehead. When subjects are exposed to time stimuli, these areas of the brain react, and there is a change in the current flow and the brain waves. When subjects are exposed to stress stimuli in connection with time, these areas are practically on fire. The temporal lobes experience extreme conditions under stress, which have a negative effect on the rest of the brain. In the experiment, researchers found only a few time stimuli that did not put the brain under stress. Even imagining always having enough time and no time stress presented subjects with a challenge. But why is that? Researchers argue in their work that the nature of time alone is so negatively intertwined in our brains that all stimuli related to time represent a potential for stress. So, does the illusion of time make us mentally ill? And if there is no time, what is reality? Imagine your world as it is right now. Then imagine that time simply does not exist. You probably have difficulty imagining that. That's how much our feelings and everyday experiences are tied to time. Buddhist monks claim that the essence and limitations of time can be overcome through techniques such as meditation. In the worldview of these people, time really is only an illusion. Those who have overcome time recognize the eternity of all being and live in a dimension that exists outside of a linear passage of time. The monks experience the changing of the seasons like other people, and they see the sun rising in the morning and setting in the evening. But they know that these events are neither absolute nor related to time or physical forces as we know them. For them, time and matter are part of the Maya, the illusion of this world. Subscribe now and never miss a new video again.